Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm here. I guess I'm going to talk about the Tim Drake Robin issue. Um, while I was sick, and then kind of leading up to last couple days, I saw a lot of commentary about the worst comic of all time, Tim Drake Robin, and just worst comic. So I thought to myself, I can kind of guess where it probably goes awry. Tim Drake. If you haven't been paying attention, Tim Drake was the Robin after Jason Todd. So the third Robin. Although technically, if you really get into things, it's probably the third most well-known Robin. But of course, you had Carrie Kelly, which is later Dark Knight Returns Robin, but not the. So I mean, but I think introduced sooner. I think Carrie Kelly came before. I'm pretty sure. Maybe when was Dark Knight Returns? I'm trying to sort it out. Anyway, regardless. Somebody will correct me in the comments. Tim Drake, who most people know as the third Robin, a popular Robin, a Robin that was in existence for some of the 80s, certainly a lot of the 90s, and had this brief romance with Jubilee during the Marvel DC crossover. And I think Tim Drake is kind of one of those fan favorite characters. Not as much as say Wally West was, but definitely kind of a fan favorite character. A lot of people have an attachment to Tim Drake. And so they, a couple months ago, or maybe a year ago at this point, DC decided to reveal that Tim Drake was bisexual or gay. They're not really clear on that point. They're kind of moving it to just gay. But of course, he had been dating Stephanie, which was again another pairing that a lot of people liked. That was kind of a fan favorite couple. Not at the same level as say Spider-Man and MJ, but still a couple that people liked. And then it was kind of a weird time for DC where they made Tim Drake gay or bisexual, and they had him kind of having interest in Bernard. Bernard being a character from the old Tim Drake comic when he was in the Robin, he had a solo series way back. The weird part about that is Bernard was, as I recall, super horny for Tim Drake's mom. Anyway, Tim Drake, Bernard, the character, who's definitely gay, in now, was written just radically different back in the 90s. And a lot of 90s fans were already kind of irritated that comics are so different. It was not a fan favorite move. Let's put it that way. Parts of Twitter loved it, but it was one of those moves that seemed to really irritate a bunch of people. And other people like whatever your flavor, whether you like it, don't like it, whatever else. That it's up to you. That's just the history of how we got here. It's kind of why I laid out. So this solo book comes out. By the way, one other awkward thing in all this was that DC made a almost big deal out of Tim Drake is bisexual or maybe gay or whatever. He's got a new status quo and a boyfriend, or maybe a boyfriend. And then like a month later, or a very short time later, they revealed that John Kent is gay. And then that got all the attention. And it kind of felt like a weird move on DC's part to take two fairly major characters in the course of like 30 days, reveal a sexuality change in both. And then one hogs all of the media attention, the other one does. So anyway, it was kind of a bizarre time for old DC at that moment. But be that as it may. So this comic comes out. Lots of people hate it. It's getting tons of hate videos and all the rest. So I picked it up to read it, and I'm like, is this just because the character is gay in the comic, or is there some deeper reason why people hate it? Now, I want to pause here for a second and say that I don't know if you feel the same, but I want to give you my perspective on something. If you hear a lot about how something is amazing or something is terrible, it tends to shift your opinion when you're reading the book. If you heard, oh my God, this is awful, this is the worst book made of all time, this is one of the worst things that's ever been done in the history of all comics, you generally are going to read that book and go, it's not so bad. Because your expectations were set super low, and it comes up. Same thing the other way. If you hear that a comic book's the best thing ever, you're like, I'll reveal something right here. I liked Vertigo back when DC did it in the 90s very much. You know what my least favorite title in Vertigo was? My least favorite? I'll give you a clue. I really liked Shade. I really liked Doom Patrol. I liked, God, what I like. I mean, I liked The Invisibles when that was out. It was a little bit later. Um, I thought there were lots of good Vertigo books. I like the books of magic. My least favorite was Sandman by a mile. I have nothing against Neil Gaiman. I actually like Neil Gaiman's books quite a bit. I think some of his stuff that he did were truly brilliant. His books, but Sandman was not my favorite comic. And people would often look at me kind of crazy when I'd say that. I don't know. I will take Shade the Changing Man or Doom Patrol over Sandman like any day of the week, twice on Sunday. That's just me. Part of the reason why is that everybody was losing their minds about how good Sandman was. And you couldn't turn around without people saying this is the best comic in the history of every comic. And oh my God, Neil Gaiman, blah, 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 blah. And it just, it was probably the least interesting one to me. I thought the one that caught my attention the least. That's just me. Now, everybody's going to have a different opinion. So I say that from the standpoint of when I read Robin, spoilers, it wasn't a very good book. But there were some definite parts to it that we're going to get into that are really just kind of very off. But for the moment, let's say you're one of those people who hates Robin now, and you've actually read it. You haven't watched it through the eyes of another YouTuber. The story in Robin #1 is pretty much the most vanilla first issue origin story you get. Let me give you kind of a summary of what happens in that comic, abstracting away all the stuff that made it so awkward and weird as a comic. Okay? Just getting rid of all that. Here's what the comic is fundamentally about. Tim Drake has decided to move to a new location and away from the Bat family to find his own path. He will have a new supporting cast and have to use his detective skills to uncover a murder mystery. That's the comic. That's it. Literally, I'm serious. That is the comic. Now, if you go back and you read it, everything I said is 100% true. It is a very paint by numbers, first issue of a character that's been in another book going off on their own, having a solo title. In fact, that's kind of the problem for me. That's like problem #1. It is such a tired trope of a comic in terms of, oh, he's in a new location. Oh, he's got a new place he lives. Oh, there's a new supporting cast. Oh, he's going to have to lean on his detective skills. Oh, there's a villain doing some mysterious evil plot. Oh, he's trying to sort out his life. I mean, you've seen it before, like a billion times you've seen this before. There was nothing original about that. So my first impression from reading Robin was that, which was to say, I can't believe they're telling the same stupid story. There's nothing original here. I don't think it's the worst comic ever made. I think it's just the same comic ever made in a lot of cases. Thoroughly unimpressed. But then I think you get into the deeper problems in that book and why people are probably pretty upset. Now, some of these I can agree with. Some of these I don't really care about. Riley Rossmo is definitely one of the factors. So Riley is got to be one of the most, I would say polarizing, but polarizing would kind of indicate that there were huge fans on both sides. And there is a small group of Riley fans, but there's a much larger group of Riley haters. And here is where, again, some aspect of me wants to be, nice, about it, or at least understanding about it, because I loved, when he first came out, Michael Mignola. Loved that artist. This is the artist of Hellboy. Now, it might surprise you, although those of you who are older with long memories will remember this, that Mignola had a period of time where he was hated. And people hated his ugly, blocky, just terrible look. And there was this Wolverine the Jungle Adventure, Wolverine Fought Apocalypse, and it was a one-shot. It was a really cool book. It's on this channel. I do a review of that comic with Larry. It's a great comic. I love that comic. Michael Mignola artwork, brilliant. People hated that comic and hated that artist, and he would get hate mail, and they hated him because his style was so different. And very early on for me in comics, I came to love unique styles. Bill Sienkiewicz, certainly Mignola. I mean, hell, once upon a time, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee were pretty unique. Todd McFarlane were different looking art. They were different. And I loved different. So Riley Rossmo has an art style entirely different from others. So I give that props. It is something new and unique. However, it is hard. The characters look bizarre. It's not an art style I like. So I guess I'm like the people who said Mignola was, the people who said Mignola's art was too blocky and everything. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's amazing. Riley's art is super goofy, bizarre. It's not for me. Maybe for you, and that's fine. It's not for me. That art combined with the new status quo of Tim Drake, where he is drawn to look like just a very delicate boy. It kind of underscores, or it highlights the entire kind of aspect of, the Tim Drake is gay now, and so he's like, they're having to kind of do the entire character in a very different fashion. And if you didn't like the Tim Drake is gay storyline or change, then this art style kind of triples down on that. The characters look, he draws awkward, weird looking characters, very stylistic characters. And then you get to the dialogue. And the dialogue is it is, first of all, it does exactly what a lot of the listeners to this show say they hate, who are part of the LGBT community, who say things like, I just want the comic to be, filled with some action, have some adventure, everything else. I don't want it to be hammer over the skull repeatedly that the main character is gay. This comic goes for that hammer and pretty much doesn't let up. Including in moments where it super doesn't make sense. There's a detective that's called in who is also gay. Maybe it's kind of, or a bigot. I mean, one of those two, who, tells Tim Drake, like, I'm not your very gay mother or something like that. And it's like, are you being salty toward Robin because he's gay, or are you saying you're gay? Like, I can't, Roscoe's drawing them all like male ballerinas. So I'm like, I can't tell which way this is going. So that means the writing is also kind of screwy. So either that's a really awkward, maybe homophobic line, or trying to establish maybe a tough as nails kind of dirty cop. I don't know what we're doing here. Or it's like one of the bizarrest inclusions of LGBTQ naming that you could find. And the book has lots of stuff like that. And and the supporting cast is like it's intentionally goofy, awkward. They're like, I mean, this is what they've been doing with Harley Quinn, where it's like, look, she's surrounded by carnival freaks, and this is like, hey, Tim Drake's living by the docks on a boat, and everyone around him is super weird because weird neighborhoods are fun. Don't you love weird neighborhoods and quirky people? Well, we've got quirky people. Everyone's quirky and weird. This is a Coen Brothers film come to life in a comic. Everybody is strange. Strange is beautiful. So you combine this very bizarre writing with very bizarre dialogue, with art that is an acquired taste, is the friendly way to put it, with a story and setup in the origin that is so over. I mean, that is just so done, so been done. Not been done, the creator of in Antarctic Press, Ninja High School, but just it has been done. There you go. Two of you got that reference. That's the problem. And when you pick this up in the context of everything else, DC kind of trying to find its footing, comics publishing strategy being somewhat weird, you go, all right, is this the worst comic of all time? No. We're going to talk about that one in a second. No, it's still not the worst comic of all time, but the Robin comic was not the worst comic this week. I will definitely, there are worse. It's just, it winds up being a weird product. with the status quo that the readership has not embraced. And it's kind of that same old argument that we're going to use for the Little Mermaid and for Namor and everything else. You can certainly claim that everyone who hasn't embraced this new status quo for Tim Drake is a homophobe and a bigot. You can try that. You could do it. But once again, the reality is that DC for 3+ decades sold everyone on a different version of his character, and they've changed it up, and they haven't won over the readers yet. That's not a controversial statement. It's just a true statement. DC has not won over its readers. Can they? Yeah. Good storytelling will do it. This comic is not that. So, awkward comic. Again, I sort of get, because I think Rosmo is just a lightning rod for people losing their minds at this point. I'm not quite sure why that comic got the most hate that it did, but it's not good. By me saying that, I'm not saying it's not bad. No, it's not a good comic, at least in my view. But the worst comic this week is absolutely that Marvel Voices. God, was it? It is basically Marvel Voices Hispanic is what the comic is. And that is, their standard anthology issue. And we've talked about how those issues are painful because they often stereotype the characters to arguably racist degrees. Now, I guess I'm pleased to say in this case there's less, but still pretty bad stereotyping. We get a Miles Morales story where he's got a salsa dance and everybody's got to dance because dancing is so. And so there's a little bit of that. There's definitely some food. The characters are talking about food. Not as much food as the last one I reviewed on this channel where they had stories where the characters teaching you how to cook. Gross. It does feature the characters just randomly breaking into Spanish, which they don't do at any other point. And so you're just kind of confused why the comic is doing this, and it really comes across like a some white person who's actually never met a Hispanic person, writing like how they think they sound. Now they hired people who fit the comic to write the stories and work on the stories, but it still comes across weird. And then you've got what has to be the most eye-rollingly terrible story, which is the Sam Alexander Nova, flies into a space conflict and discovers some mean space people who are trying to deport illegal immigrants off of their planet by calling them like dirty disease carriers, awful people. And it turns out the immigrants did bring a disease with them, and they're trying to use magical strawberries or something to heal the disease, but because they can't understand what each other is saying, because apparently even though these characters have interdimensional space travel and ships and everything else, they have not gotten around to getting the universal communicator that like every other alien race in the entire Marvel universe has. But anyway, they're kicking out the illegal immigrants. Turns out the illegal immigrants are just trying to help, even though they so it's like it's a border story. And the comic even is summed up by Sam going, I wish, they of course he helps them understand each other, and then 2 days later they're all loving, illegal immigrants, refugees. And at the end, Sam's like, if only they could do, if only America was as good as this, or if only the Earth could do this too. And it's like, I mean, it is as subtle as a brick to the back of the head. I mean, again, you could tell a story about illegal immigrations, I guess, but this was 4 pages of ham-fisted, propaganda. There's no other way to put it. And it's like, just stupid. I mean, and it's just too on the nose. We're going to do a Marvel Voices Latinx, and you have you're going to do a story about how places that reject and deport illegal aliens or hateful monsters. It's like, I mean, what? All right. The comic also does feature Latinx throughout. Sounds a lot like Kleenex. I'm still, puzzled. Not puzzled's the wrong word, but I still, you know, have to point out the obvious, which is the vast majority of the Hispanic population hates that term. And so continuing to push it as this is the term for them, this is how you're going to call them. It feels a lot closer to, white people throwing out the N word than a respectful, term that community enjoys. Just saying, I live in an area with a high percentage of Mexican people, Hispanic people, and there is a significant hatred of the term Latinx within the community. Now, I'm sure some other people like it and all the rest, but feels like somebody ought to kind of work that one out, because if there's a mall here, kind of near Fort Worth. It's a Hispanic mall. There's a lot of Hispanic stores and pretty cool ass mall, actually. But if you go in there and just start calling people Latinx, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Like they're going to beat the shit out of you. That's what they're going to do. So I don't know. I mean, again, yeah. But that comic turned out was far crappier in terms of just eye rolling propaganda, characters being reduced to the most basic, again, arguably racist versions of themselves. I don't know what Marvel's doing with voices at this point. It's no longer a showcase for these characters. It's an opportunity to, really, dive in on stereotypes and lowest common denominator shit. That's what that is. So, I don't get the publishing strategy there at all. But those are my thoughts on Tim Drake. Sorry, this video went a little bit long, but that is it. That's the story. So hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of Tim Drake Robin if you read it. Please, please, please save us all a lot of trouble, and do not post the comments of Perch liked it. I just shut the fuck up. Just didn't like it. Didn't like it. Thought there was a worse comic out there. That's all. And I don't know. I get it. I get it. People have liked this character for decades, and they changed the aspect of this character significantly in this comic. Tripled down on that, and people are peeved. I totally understand. I get it. My only comment to that group is, hey, if you're super pissed off at it, don't buy it, and certainly don't keep buying it. Don't, if you hate something, don't hate buy. But what am I? This is where I think we'd all get along better as a society if you just admitted the obvious to each other, which is, hey, there's a character with a very established status quo. Hey, they changed the character. The fans of the original status quo don't like the change. The end. The end. It's not. There's no drama there. That's just obvious. Trying to force somebody to like the new status quo is, A, stupid, and B, insulting. So, just live and let live. If you like it, cool. If you're the company publishing it, I hope you make your money. Like, I hope you prove everybody wrong. I really do. And everybody buys this comic and it's super popular and it does great. Prove everybody wrong. Because if you do that, even if I don't like the comic, I'm still going to respect the fact that you made money and that you're going where the money is and you're trying to, sell the comics to the best of your ability. I don't have to like all the comics. I won't like all the comics. All comics are not for me, or should be, or are made for me. So I hope you have comics out there for other people, because if you're relying just on me, I'm not going to fund your business alone. You're going to need other people. So go get those other people. Some of the things you make I won't like. It's okay. But, you do have to make sure those other people show up. I think this comic, because it's related to Batman, will do fine. But, Rosmo doesn't have an amazing track record of high sales for the books. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. We will see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.